Commander Park's eyes narrowed as he studied the sensor readings on the bridge of the Imperial Border Patrol vessel * Eternal Vigilance *. After 20 years patrolling this quiet sector, he recognized every authorized transport route and commercial vessel signature. These readings were different. "Sir, 7 unknown vessels just appeared in Sector 12B," Lieutenant Kim reported, her fingers flying across the control panel. "They're not using any registered identification signals." Park leaned forward. "Magnify the visual feed." The main screen displayed sleek ships unlike any in the Imperial database. Their hulls featured smooth curves where Imperial vessels had sharp angles. Soft blue lights pulsed along their sides, almost like a heartbeat. "Run a full analysis," Park ordered. "And alert Imperial Command." The bridge fell silent as the crew worked. Park watched the strange fleet hold formation, making no aggressive moves. They simply waited, as if expecting the Empire to make first contact. "Sir, their technology. It's confusing our systems," the science officer reported. "Their propulsion appears almost primitive, but their energy signatures exceed our classification scales." Before Park could respond, a message broadcast across all Imperial frequencies in perfect galactic standard. "This is Director Moon of the Human Coalition. We seek peaceful dialogue with the Galactic Empire." "Humans," Park repeated. In his long career, he had encountered 47 different species. Never had he heard of humans. Within hours, Emperor Li was briefed in his palace on the capital world. The Emperor sat motionless as military advisors argued over how to respond to these mysterious newcomers. "We should assemble the battle fleet," General Jun insisted. "Unknown technology means unknown threats. Aggression could provoke an unnecessary conflict," countered Ambassador Han. "We should open diplomatic channels." Emperor Li raised his hand for silence. "We will do both. Ambassador Han will lead our diplomatic vessel to make contact. Admiral Kang will position battle groups nearby, but out of scanning range." 3 days later, Ambassador Han stood in the pristine meeting chamber of the Harmonious Discussion waiting for the human representatives to board. Despite his diplomatic training, he felt nervous. The Empire had existed for 10,000 years. How could an entire civilization have remained hidden for so long? The airlock cycled, and 4 humans entered. Han was surprised by how similar they looked to his own people, though their heights varied more dramatically. The leader, Director Moon, was a tall female with calm eyes that seemed to miss nothing. "Welcome aboard the Harmonious Discussion Han said with a formal bow. "I am Ambassador Han, voice of Emperor Li." Director Moon returned the gesture perfectly. "Thank you for your welcome. We are honored to begin this historic dialogue." As they seated themselves around the conference table, Han noticed subtle differences in the humans. Their movements were fluid but controlled, suggesting strength despite their relatively light frames. "Our records show no reference to humans or your home system," Han began. "This is unusual." Director Moon smiled slightly. "We've been observing galactic civilization for centuries. Your recent expansion toward Earth made continued isolation imprudent." "Centuries?" Han couldn't hide his surprise. "How could you remain undetected by Imperial sensors?" "We chose our moments carefully," Moon replied, "and we have certain technological advantages in the area of sensor avoidance." As refreshments were served, one of the human delegates, Officer Shin, casually lifted a metal cup that Han knew weighed at least 5 kilograms. The human showed no strain at all. "You mentioned Earth," Han said. "Is this your home planet?" "One of them," Moon answered. "Humans have established colonies in several systems outside Imperial space." The humans exchanged glances. "That would be premature," Moon said. "We first need to establish trust." Before Han could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. The captain's voice came over the communication system. "Ambassador, an Imperial corvette has entered the area and is charging weapons." The humans showed no panic. Director Moon simply stood and said, It seems someone in your empire isn't pleased with our arrival. I suggest we move to a more secure location until this misunderstanding is resolved." Han watched in astonishment as Officer Shin tapped a small device on his wrist. All 4 humans were instantly surrounded by a faint blue glow. "What are you doing?" Han asked. "Ensuring our safety," Moon replied calmly. "Don't worry, Ambassador. We won't harm your people, even if they fire first. That's not how humans operate." The first shots from the rogue Imperial corvette streaked toward the diplomatic vessel, and Han realized this first contact was about to become far more complicated than anyone had imagined. Chief Xenobiologist Choi moved her scanner slowly over the human subject's arm. Officer Shin sat patiently, seemingly amused by the Imperial scientist's fascination. "Remarkable," Choi muttered. "Your bone density suggests evolution on a high-gravity world, yet your musculature is far more efficient than comparable species." The medical bay of the Imperial science vessel Empirical Truth had been converted into a temporary diplomatic research station following the incident with the rogue corvette. Emperor Li had personally ordered a full assessment of these mysterious humans. "We adapted to our environment," Officer Shin explained. "Earth presented many challenges during our development." Choi nodded, making notes on her tablet. "And these enhanced reflexes we observed during the attack. Are all humans capable of such speed?" "Some more than others," Shin replied with a small smile. "But yes, it's a common trait." Across the room, Grand Admiral Kang watched the proceedings with barely concealed impatience. The military leader had been ordered to participate in this assessment, but he clearly preferred action to observation. "Biological curiosities don't win wars," he said dismissively. "Their ships may have interesting designs, but our battle cruisers outclass them in every meaningful category." Ambassador Han, who had witnessed the humans' response to the rogue attack, looked uncomfortable. "Admiral, I wouldn't underestimate them. The way they disabled Captain Song's corvette without destroying it shows precision we rarely see." Kang waved away the concern. "A lucky counterstrike. Nothing more." The door to the medical bay slid open as Director Moon entered, accompanied by 2 Imperial guards who seemed more nervous than their charge. Moon bowed respectfully to the assembled officials. "I trust Officer Shin is being helpful," she said. "Very," Choi responded, "though I have many more questions." "Perhaps I can answer some while we tour your ship," Moon suggested. "I'm particularly interested in your propulsion systems." Admiral Kang stepped forward. "Our technology is not available for inspection." Moon smiled politely. "We already understand your propulsion methods." "Admiral, I was merely being courteous." She turned to Ambassador Han. "Has the Emperor reviewed our proposal for cultural exchange?" Before Han could answer, an aide rushed into the room. "Admiral, security breach in Section 7. The surveillance systems are down." Kang's hand moved to his sidearm. "Is this your doing?" he demanded of Moon. "No," she replied calmly, "but I suspect it may be related to Captain Song's supporters. Our intelligence suggests he was part of a larger faction opposed to any dialogue with non-imperial species." The lights flickered, then emergency systems activated, bathing the room in red. Security alerts sounded throughout the ship. "All personnel, intruder alert, armed hostiles in the engineering section," announced the ship's automated system. Moon tapped a small device on her wrist. "This is Director Moon. Security situation developing on the Imperial vessel. Standby protocols activated." Admiral Kang issued rapid orders into his communicator. "Seal all sections. Deploy security teams to engineering. No one leaves this ship." Officer Shin stood up from the examination table. "We can help, Admiral. Our combat specialists are already tracking the intruders." "You have people on my ship." Kang's face darkened with anger. "We have people everywhere," Moon replied simply. "It's how we've survived this long." The security screens activated, showing masked figures moving through the engineering section. They carried weapons banned by Imperial law, and we're setting explosive devices near critical systems. Those are military-grade demolition charges, Kang said, voice tight with concern. They could destroy half the ship. Moon stepped closer to the screen. Your security teams won't reach them in time. Allow us to intervene. After a moment of intense internal struggle, Kang nodded. Moon spoke into her wrist device again. Team 2, you have permission to engage. Minimum force protocol. On the security feed, two figures seemed to materialize from nowhere. They moved with impossible speed, disarming the saboteurs before they could react. Within 30 seconds, all intruders were incapacitated, and the explosives safely deactivated. Impossible, whispered Choi, staring at the screen. The human operatives moved faster than our cameras could properly track. Admiral Kang's face had gone pale. Who are you people? Director Moon's expression remained neutral. We're survivors, Admiral. Our history forced us to develop capabilities your people never needed. Later that evening, Emperor Lee reviewed the security footage in his private chamber. He watched as human operatives neutralized trained Imperial saboteurs with ease, moving with speed that blurred the cameras. They could have killed everyone, the Emperor noted. Ambassador Han nodded. But they didn't. Not a single fatality. Their technology, their capabilities, they could have conquered multiple systems before we even knew they existed, Lee continued. Yet they chose to announce themselves peacefully. Director Moon claims humans prefer cooperation to conquest, Han said. Their history apparently taught them the cost of unnecessary conflict. Emperor Lee turned away from the screen, his expression troubled. Find out everything you can about these humans and their history. I want to know what made them this way, and why they've chosen to reveal themselves now. Han bowed deeply. Yes, Emperor. What else are you hiding? He whispered. Imperial historian Bai had not left the great archives for 3 days. Her eyes burned from reading ancient texts, and her back ached from hunching over fragile scrolls. But she couldn't stop. Not when the Emperor himself had requested information about these mysterious humans. The circular chamber around her held the collected knowledge of 10,000 years of Imperial history. Yet references to any species resembling humans were frustratingly scarce. More tea, historian? Asked her assistant, placing a steaming cup beside her. Thank you, Ba said, not looking up from a crumbling text written in old Imperial script. Just as she was about to move to another section, a phrase caught her eye. Deathworlders. She quickly translated the surrounding text. The travelers spoke of Deathworlders in the Outer Rim, beings who emerged from planets so hostile that merely surviving produced extraordinary capabilities. She read aloud. They counsel avoiding these regions, as Deathworlders view conflict differently than civilized species. Ba carefully photographed the passage with her tablet. This was the first concrete reference she had found. Meanwhile, at the diplomatic summit on the capital world, something unprecedented occurred. Representative Du of the Luminous Conclave approached Emperor Lee during a recess. The ancient species rarely involved themselves in galactic politics, preferring to observe from their isolated systems. Emperor, Du said, his translucent skin glowing softly, I must speak with you privately. In the Emperor's secure meeting room, Representative Du seemed uncomfortable, his light pulses shifting to anxious patterns. We encountered humans 12,000 years ago, Du said finally. Emperor Lee failed to hide his surprise. Before the founding of the Empire. Yes, their civilization was primitive then, but already showing unusual potential. Du's glow dimmed. We chose to leave them alone. I suggest you consider doing likewise. Are they dangerous? Lee asked directly. Not in the way you mean, Du replied. Humans don't seek conflict, but they excel at it when pressed. What makes them unique is their adaptability. They learn and change faster than any species we've encountered in our million-year history. Before Emperor Lee could ask more questions, Du stood. I've said more than my conclave would approve. Consider this a gesture of respect for your leadership. With that, the ancient being departed, leaving the Emperor with more questions than answers. Across the city, Intelligence Director Yoon presented her findings to the Imperial Council. We've discovered evidence that humans have been quietly operating throughout Imperial space for at least 70 years, she said, displaying images on the large view screen. The pictures showed human-like figures assisting various species during natural disasters and conflicts. This image shows humans providing medical aid during the Talon Plague. This one shows them evacuating civilians during the Sector 9 rebellions. Yoon paused. Most concerning, we found evidence they've been intervening when our governors exceed extraction quotas on developing worlds. Defense Minister Hyun slammed his hand on the table. Interference in imperial affairs. This confirms they are hostile. Science Minister Kwon shook her head. If their goal was hostility, why help suffering populations? Why not simply attack? In the diplomatic chambers, Director Moon sat across from Ambassador Han, both enjoying a traditional tea ceremony. Your people are quite mysterious, Han said carefully. We found references to Deathworlders in our ancient texts. Is Earth such a place? Moon smiled slightly. By your standards, yes. Our gravity is higher than Imperial standard. Our wildlife evolved to be exceptionally dangerous. Our weather patterns include devastating storms, and our tectonic activity creates natural disasters regularly. And yet you thrive there, Han observed. Not without cost, Moon replied. Our history is filled with struggles. Against nature, against each other. We nearly destroyed ourselves more than once. She sipped her tea. Our isolation was self-imposed while we matured as a species. But why reveal yourselves now? Han asked the question that had been troubling the Emperor. Because your expansion reached the edges of our territory. Better to introduce ourselves than be discovered. Moon set down her cup. And because the galaxy is changing. There are threats coming that will require all sentient species to work together. Threats? Han's eyes widened. What threats? Before Moon could answer, Historian Bay rushed into the chamber, breaking all diplomatic protocol. Ambassador, forgive my intrusion, but I found something critical. She placed her tablet on the table, displaying images of ancient ruins on abandoned worlds. These structures match human design principles exactly, but they're over 20,000 years old. Moon didn't appear surprised. Yes, we had an earlier expansion period. It ended badly. That's why we've been more cautious this time. Then humans are far older than the Empire itself, Han said, struggling to comprehend the implications. Civilizations rise and fall, Moon said gently. What matters is what we learn in the process. She looked at both Imperials. And we've learned that cooperation yields better results than conquest. That's the message we've come to share. Bai and Han exchanged glances, both wondering how the Emperor would respond to this revelation, that humans weren't new arrivals in the galaxy, but perhaps one of its oldest surviving species. Minister Jin walked quickly through the Imperial Palace halls, his formal robes fluttering behind him. The emergency council meeting had been called with only minutes of notice. Not good news, he thought. Inside the Grand Council chamber, the atmosphere was tense. Emperor Li sat silently at the head of the table, his expression unreadable as ministers argued loudly among themselves. 3 more systems have formally requested human protection, Jin announced as he took his seat. The Galactic Senate is in uproar. Science Minister Kwon looked up from her data tablet. Which systems? Talon, Meridian, and New Dawn, Jin replied. All recently conquered territories. Defense Minister Hyun slammed his fist on the table. This is a coordinated attack on Imperial authority. These humans have been planning this for decades. Emperor Li raised his hand for silence. Minister Hyun, what do our military simulations show? Admiral Kang stepped forward, activating the holographic display in the center of the table. A detailed battle projection appeared, showing Imperial fleets engaging human vessels. Our initial simulations showed we could overwhelm them with superior numbers, Kang said grimly. But after analyzing their response to Captain Song's attack, we've had to revise our projections. The hologram shifted, now showing Imperial ships being disabled by precise strikes that targeted engines and weapons systems without destroying the vessels. Their defensive capabilities exceed our projections, Kang continued, and they appear to prioritize disabling rather than destroying enemy forces. This actually makes conventional warfare more difficult, as our tactics rely on calculating acceptable losses. So you're saying we cannot defeat them militarily? Emperor Li asked directly. Kang hesitated. I'm saying the cost would be unacceptable, Your Majesty. We would lose too many ships and crews. The room fell silent. In over 1,000 years, no force had successfully challenged Imperial military might. Perhaps we should consider their offers of technological exchange, Minister Quan suggested carefully. Their medical advances alone could benefit billions of Imperial citizens. Appeasement. Minister Hyun spat. Once we show weakness, they will press their advantage. If I may, Your Majesty, Intelligence Director Yoon said quietly. There's something else you should know. At the Emperor's nod, she continued. We've confirmed humans have established hidden outposts throughout Imperial territory for at least 50 years. They could have been collecting intelligence, placing operatives, or worse, and we never detected them. The implications hung heavy in the air. How do you fight an enemy who has already infiltrated your territory without your knowledge? How did we not detect them sooner? Emperor Li asked, his voice betraying rare frustration. Director Yoon's answer was simple. Because they didn't want us to. Across the city, in the human diplomatic compound, Director Moon reviewed the latest reports with her team. The Imperial Council is divided, Officer Shin reported. Some push for war, others for alliance. Moon nodded. And the border systems, more requesting our protection every day. The Empire's harsh taxation and resource extraction policies have created many enemies. Moon sighed. We didn't want confrontation. We hoped to gradually introduce ourselves. Plans change, Shin replied. Our intelligence suggests General Jun is preparing a first strike option, regardless of the Emperor's decision. Before Moon could respond, their communication system activated. Ambassador Han's face appeared on the screen. Director Moon, the situation has escalated. The Human Coalition's declaration has been received by all Imperial systems. Moon looked confused. What declaration? Han looked surprised. You don't know. It's being broadcast on all frequencies. The Human Coalition will defend any peaceful species seeking autonomy from oppression, regardless of origin. Moon's expression hardened. That message was not authorized by our leadership. Someone is trying to force a confrontation. She stood up. I need to speak with the Emperor immediately. Meanwhile, in a secret facility deep under the capital city, General Jun addressed his loyal officers. The Emperor has grown weak, he declared. These humans represent the greatest threat to Imperial power in a millennium, and he entertains their diplomats while they undermine our authority. On the large screen behind him, footage showed human ships responding to distress calls from Imperial mining colonies, providing aid that the Empire itself had denied. Our informants tell us their technology could neutralize our entire defense grid, Jun continued. We must strike first, while we still can. A junior officer raised his hand. Sir, our analysis suggests a first strike would fail. Their defensive capabilities. Propaganda. Jun interrupted. They want us to fear them. But the Empire has ruled for 10,000 years. We will not be the generation that surrenders to alien influence. Back in the Imperial Palace, Emperor Li sat alone in his meditation chamber when a security alert sounded. The screen on his wall activated, showing Ambassador Han and Director Moon requesting emergency audience. Your Majesty, Han said urgently, we have evidence that General Jun is planning a military coup. He intends to launch an attack on the human fleet, with or without authorization. And the declaration? Li asked. About defending systems against us. Not from our leadership, Moon assured him. Someone is trying to escalate the situation. Emperor Li stood, his decision made. The next few hours would determine whether the Empire adapted to this new reality or shattered against it. The Grand Hall of Imperial Governance had never seen such a gathering. Representatives from every known galactic species filled the massive chamber. Species that had been enemies for generations now sat side by side, united by curiosity about what would happen next. Emperor Li entered without the usual fanfare. His traditional robes of state had been replaced by simpler attire, a powerful symbolic gesture noticed by every diplomat present. For 10,000 years, he began, his voice carrying throughout the hall. The Empire has maintained order through strength. Our ships protected trade routes. Our laws governed countless worlds. Our armies kept the peace. He paused, looking around the room. But peace through fear is not true peace. Today, we acknowledge that true strength comes through cooperation. Murmurs swept through the assembly. Behind the Emperor stood Director Moon and the human delegation. For the past 3 weeks, they had been demonstrating medical technologies that could cure diseases that had plagued Imperial citizens for generations. The arrival of humanity has shown us both our greatest strength and our greatest weakness, Li continued. We are strong in our unity, but weak in our refusal to change. In the back of the hall, Ambassador Han noticed several military officers slip quietly out of the chamber. He caught Officer Shin's eye and nodded slightly. The human returned the gesture. The new galactic charter before you today represents not surrender, but evolution, the Emperor said. The Empire will retain its historical territories, but recognize the autonomy of all sentient species. Trade will flow freely. Knowledge will be shared openly, and no species will claim dominion over another. As he spoke, the doors to the hall suddenly sealed shut. Security alerts flashed on communication devices throughout the room. Please remain calm, the Emperor said firmly. Security protocols have been activated. Outside the hall, General Jun led his troops toward the palace's power core. His plan was simple: cut power to the security systems, eliminate the human delegation, and declare martial law. The Empire would return to its true path: domination of the galaxy. As Han left, Li reviewed the footage once more, watching a single human operative disarm 3 Imperial saboteurs in the span of 2 seconds. Sir, our advance team has gone silent, his lieutenant reported. Jun frowned. Send another squad. All squads have gone silent, sir. We've lost contact with everyone inside the palace perimeter. Before Jun could respond, shadows moved around them. Humans in dark uniforms appeared from hidden positions, weapons ready but not firing. General Jun, a calm voice said, your coup attempt has failed before it began. Director Moon's chief of security, Commander Su, stepped forward. Your communications have been blocked. Your supporters in the fleet have been contained, and the Emperor is currently explaining to the assembled delegates exactly why the old ways must end. Jun reached for his weapon, but found it wouldn't activate. How? We've been monitoring your plans for weeks, Su explained. Human intelligence networks identified your conspiracy almost immediately. Back in the Grand Hall, the Emperor continued, seemingly unaware of the drama unfolding throughout the palace. The signing of the new Galactic Charter marks the beginning of a transformed interstellar community. Already, human medical technology has been adapted to treat 15 previously incurable diseases affecting Imperial citizens. Screens around the hall displayed images of new medical facilities where humans worked alongside Imperial doctors. This is only the beginning, Li said. Together, we can achieve far more than we ever could through conflict. When the Emperor finished speaking, the hall erupted in applause. Species that had only known Imperial rule through force now sought a different path forward. Not freedom from the Empire, but partnership with it. As the formal signing ceremony began, Ambassador Han approached Director Moon. Your security forces captured General Jun, he said quietly. How did you know his plans? Moon smiled slightly. Humans have always had a talent for understanding motivations. When people feel threatened, they often choose aggression over adaptation. And the Emperor? Did you anticipate his decision to transform the Empire rather than fight to preserve its old form? We hoped, Moon admitted. Throughout our history, humans have learned that leadership requires wisdom, not just strength. Your Emperor showed both. As the last signatures were recorded, Imperial historian Ba made the final entry in the day's record. The arrival of humans didn't end the Empire as many feared. Instead, they showed us what we could become. In seeking to preserve our power, we had forgotten our purpose. The humans, with their strange blend of fragility and resilience, didn't conquer us. They reminded us of who we once were. Outside the Great Hall, Emperor Li and Director Moon watched the twin suns setting over the capital. The sky painted red and gold across the ancient city. Your people adapt remarkably quickly, Moon observed. We had a good teacher, the Emperor replied. Adaptation is, after all, humanity's greatest strength. Not our greatest, Moon corrected gently. Our greatest strength is recognizing that we are stronger together than apart, something your empire has now remembered. As darkness fell, lights came on across the city. Not the harsh white of imperial efficiency, but warmer tones that transformed the urban landscape. A small change, but symbolic of the larger transformation sweeping across the galaxy. A new era had begun, not through conquest or submission, but through something far more powerful, understanding.